Welcome to First Day Kopites podcast. We are joined by some, not even old friends, by original contributors to the podcast. We've got Tim, and we should have had Sean, but we've got Charlie. This should be so. Last time we did this, actually, Sean Rogers showed up, so we did have a Sean. Maybe Sean O'Neill will show up before we're done. Thank you for joining us. The podcast is
there. He is.
Oh, that's amazing! Wow. Before he gets to interrupt us, the podcast is for Liverpool fans associated with Delaware, and even if you're friends of people associated with Liverpool in Delaware. If you haven't subscribed, please do. And I am told if you're on Apple Podcasts and you like what we do and you like the podcast, that helps push. Promotes the podcast so that people can find it. So please do that. Anyway, this is our first annual celebration of the podcast. It's been about 54 weeks since the pandemic hit, and we decided to start on this formula. And I guess we have the original cast, and we are going to do, well, who knows where this is going to go, but I think we're going to revisit everything that happened, the highlights of the last year. So I've got a ton of things. I've even produced a chart specially about penalties not given to Liverpool, which is a big theme of mine if you listen to the other shows. But I'm going to start with, okay, it's been a year. We haven't all been on all of the episodes, but if you had to pick a couple of highlights just to get us going, like think about what they might be, and I'll fill in some of the gaps. It could be we've had a lot of people on who've written books. My library is a lot bigger than it was a year ago, thanks to that experience. We've had fans from across the US, from San Francisco, Chicago, Baltimore. Where else? Atlanta. I'm gonna hurt somebody's feelings here by missing an out, aren't I? New York, Florida. Des Moines. Yes, we had someone. Yeah, Ben from Des Moines. I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to turn it over to somebody else. Who wants to go first?
Well, my highlight from the year was probably getting acquainted with Simon Hughes. I thought that was quite an enjoyable experience. We talked a lot about how he, in fact, was the reason, the conduit for Liverpool Football Club getting in touch with Jurgen Klopp. No one in the entire organization had Klopp's contact details. So Simon obligingly passed on said details and awaited the result, which was hiring the greatest manager in the game.
Allegedly, that's true.
Allegedly?
Good job, said that right.
Good job.
He also said, Charlie, because I'm remembering the conversation now, Timo Werner. Liverpool will definitely sign Timo Werner. Did he not say that?
No. I was giving Sean a bit of a dig in the ribs, saying the same. What's up? No bullshit transfer rumors. None of these unbelievably. So look, it's quite conceivable that not a lot happens. Now he did not predict Thiago. He suggested that Werner could or could not happen. In fact, it might have already been after Chelsea had signed Werner at that point, and we'd missed out on it. But anyway, he did give big props to Curtis Jones, Cujo, baby. And he said, yeah, big things could come from this kid, and bang on. I mean, honestly, that's almost, to me, the best thing to come from this season is Curtis Jones is going to be a world beater, and he's it's another Scouser in our team. You got to love it.
Yeah, it's interesting actually. The England under-21s bowed out of the under-21 European tournament. The only game they won,
fire in his belly too,
was the only game that Curtis Jones played in. It was also the only game that Curtis Jones got sent off in. But that's it's all.
And Curtis Jones scored in.
Yes.
Also,
he did.
Please. Yes, but he got a bloodied nose because apparently, and I didn't see it, but apparently the was it the Croats or the
yeah, I think it was
Croatians. Yeah.
were very, very overzealous in their celebration of a very fine goal late to eliminate England, or at least maybe to qualify themselves.
They did.
But hey, he got the bloody nose. So hey, look, I don't mind that. You know, someone said he's got to get used to losing. I'm like, well, he's played for fucking Liverpool this year, hasn't he? So you know.
Well, hopefully he'll only get used to losing for England. One other Liverpool connection in the game actually is, I don't know if you go that far back, but Croatia were coached by Igor Biscan.
Wasn't familiar with that name, but I did see it.
He was in the squad in 2005. Was he on the field in the 2005 Champions? Really? He was in the squad in 2005 Champions League. He says confidently.
The squad.
Confirmation.
He was the kit man.
Liverpool squad.
Yes.
Okay, so he has even more of a reason to hate English teams.
Well, so there's this incredible banner that I can't do justice to, but it's kind of based on the expression of supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, and it begins with Super Croat Igor Biscan used to be atrocious. It's some version of that. I think Paul Cope from the Anfield Rap is responsible for that. But, so Tim, what are you going to go for in terms of big memory?
A big memory that I went back and tried to watch today, and it's nearly unwatchable for me, but was probably one of the most fun, was what day was it? August the 16th, day that Manchester City got knocked out of Champions League. Charlie came to my house, and we'd been watching the match before we tried to record a podcast, and so we were well socially lubricated before we even signed on. But the funniest part of the whole story was we had somehow worked out this plan. It was lockdown, so it's the first time anyone had been inside my house since everything happened. And I was like, wouldn't it be hilarious if we were sitting in the same room recording on different laptops, and then like my wife walked behind us, and the other guys were like, wait, what's going on here? And we were so unaware of our surroundings that happened well before we even were recording. So I think Sean noticed it, and he was just like, did your wife is Charlie in the same room as you?
He's like, I think they're in the same room. Yeah.
I didn't spot that, I have to say.
So that's not a real answer, but that was one of the most fun ones. As I said, nearly unwatchable, mostly because of Charlie, but
It's kind of along the lines of what happens when an Australian and a German walk into a bar.
That's it. There's a joke there somewhere. I think the one that I had the most, that was the most enjoyable for me was probably Keith Salmon.
Yeah.
Just because like I felt like we went a long time with that. That was when we did 2 episodes. Just like hearing stories, and it just felt like sitting at a pub somewhere and just hearing stories from a guy who's got stories to tell. And that to me is, I was telling Charlie that's like one of the things that I think I missed the most about not going to places in person, is like interacting with people. And so most of my good memories about the podcast are not like learning amazing facts. It's just like the people that we ran into where you've never met this person before in your life, and yet you just sit there and have this banter over Zoom with them for a couple hours and have a few beers or something like that. So that's what I took away most from it, is just hearing people's stories.
So far we're going heavily leaning towards the author column of people who are on the show, right? But I need to mention every other author we've had, otherwise we can't check them on the on Twitter after this. But so Sean,
yeah, that was actually the one author on my list. The other 4 were supporters club people.
Oh, okay. Well, let's come back to them.
Okay.
Let's go to Sean. Kind of major memory or 2.
I mean, the biggest thing is just getting to meet all the other people from supporters clubs. I think I mean, there's a lot. There were, Hillsborough episodes, and we talked to Andrew Beasley and Cy Brundish and a bunch of these people that, 2 years ago we wouldn't have, even thought to get an audience with. I think if I had to pick one, it probably would have been the one. I can't remember his name. The guy we talked to from Oman, right?
Oh,
In the
no.
middle.
Nabs. Yeah.
Yeah, Nabs.
Yeah.
That was just
Good
amazing.
one.
I happened to be visiting my parents at the beach that day, so I was doing it from their like guest bedroom upstairs, and it was funny. I walked downstairs and told him, I was like, "Oh yeah, our guest today was from Oman." Like just had this hour-long conversation with this guy. So that was a lot of fun. That was cool. And it's just sort of using this platform to get to meet people and talk to people that you wouldn't have had the opportunity to otherwise. Kind of making lemonade out of the lemons we've had this year a little bit with this, so it's been fun.
And speaking of stories to tell, right? That guy.
Oh yeah, that guy, he had the greatest stories. Yeah, it was the one trying to get to Istanbul, right?
He was in jail
Yeah.
for the.
So actually, the only thing I'd say, if Nabs, if you're listening, David Fairclough never called me. Just saying. But
Yeah.
What's up, Nabs?
his story about Istanbul. Actually, talking about stories. I don't know if you remember. Like, I feel like I've offended a bunch of people because I'm looking down my list of people who were on the show and who we're not going to mention. But I love Michael Crump from Atlanta's story. Crumpioni, I think, is his Twitter handle about the Barcelona game. Because we were just kind of bumbling along, talking about lots of different stuff. I don't know if you remember this, but then he's like, "Oh yeah, I was at the Barcelona games." Like, what? You were?
Yeah.
And he basically says, "I wasn't watching when the corner was taken and the goal went in." And then the crowd erupted, and I kind of realized what was going on. I did like that story. That's kind of.
He's not the only one. I think Simon Hughes was mentioning that they were looking at the substitution that was about to be made. Wait a minute, what happened?
Right.
Yeah.
I think Chris Perkins was playing Total Attention. Name check.
But I'll tell you what, every single person at Catherine Rooney's was watching that screen when that happened. That's for sure, because we celebrated like nothing else.
We were. I feel like at some point we may end up talking about prospects in this year's Champions League, but feels like there's some destiny around Spanish teams, right?
Yeah. I got to get my my mileage out of this because 6 is not going to be
okay.
the right number very soon.
And yeah, hope you're right. Just let's not get carried away. I'm going to do one more round. So, okay, if we talked about kind of at least one episode that we really took to heart, maybe the next is just about kind of themes that you took away from some of the podcasts that we did, whether it be about the city, whether it be about this particular team. We can talk about some of the things that have maybe gone against us in the last year since we started the podcast. But maybe we'll do that later. Themes that you really took away from what you heard from people, either who had been to the city a lot or lived there, because we did quite a few people on from Liverpool through the year as well. Charlie, I'll go to you.
Gotta look at my cheat notes.
Oh, that preparation! I love preparation. That's good.
I noticed you sent a 28-page document.
I did not prepare. I'll just admit.
It was just page 2. That's all you needed.
I'll speak slowly, Sean. You can catch up. You got about 2.5 minutes. Well, look, I really enjoyed the opportunity to speak of my adventures to Liverpool and to Madrid on many different occasions, and I found they were generally very well received. Mostly. Chris Perkins was actually good fun to talk to about that, and summed up what I thought was the crescendo of our title winning season was that Manchester United game where we managed to sing "You're Gonna Win the League." Yeah, very confidently at that point. And ironically, it wasn't necessarily a done deal afterwards with all the null and void talk, and you never knew what was going to happen. And it was certainly a much more negative ending to that season than prior to the lockout. So, but hey, maybe that just prepared us for this season.
Yeah. So was there a reference to Madrid in there? Just because it seemed very slight.
I could make, I actually
I
went
miss
to
hearing
Madrid.
about Madrid. Yeah.
I was in Madrid.
Yeah.
For that final. It was fantastic.
Huh.
Fantastic. Interestingly, along those lines, Sergio Ramos is injured. So I don't know how I feel about that.
To me, that is the ending question. Maybe we'll go to Sergio Ramos and in the end. But
well, I was in Madrid. I actually asked. I asked around where it was that he lived. Where would I find Sergio Ramos at 2:00 in the morning on a Sunday morning? And they told me where I'd find him, and I decided that maybe discretion would be the better part of valor.
I think you just needed to take that banner up to the house. I think that would have been good enough.
Yeah.
It would have been so nice. But
So
yeah.
do you guys recall the Kathy Long episode?
I do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because as you were talking, I was just reminded of it. Like her whole story about working for Spurs on that day.
Oh yeah. And not having like her own ticket.
Yes.
And then she was on the beach the next day while the the parade was going on, which up until that point, being at the parade was just huge. And then anyway, she decided that she was on the beach. So hey, I was in an airport in North Carolina going like, wow, they're holding this parade already? Okay.
So obviously we need to win something else soon to have a real parade anyway.
Well, we have a backlog of celebrations for the next parade. So the next parade is going to be quite impressive.
So Tim, I can't even remember what the question was, but it was some interesting.
I was trying to remember too.
Some interesting thing that was
something about a theme.
Yes.
The city, the club, the coach.
Club.
Any of those things.
So I'll name drop my American supporters because I think one of the other themes, and I think one of the reasons that I enjoyed talking to people from supporters clubs around this country, or just around the world, like Sean mentioned NABS as well. Just the idea of like the family atmosphere, which was definitely a draw to the club for me in the first place. But then to hear stories about that when we were like, most of us are probably the most isolated we've been in our adult lives, I think was really cool. Some of the ones that I hit on that I wrote for my list was when we talked to Carrie, whose last name I don't know, but Carrie somewhere on Instagram.
That is her last name, isn't it?
Yeah, right.
It's just somewhere. It's Norwegian. So like hearing those stories about how she would travel around the world and just meet up with supporters groups, whether there was a match to watch or not. You already mentioned Ben Bergman. I really enjoyed talking to him and just, I thought it was funny. The one thing that I remembered from that is talking about how sometimes for Mother's Day would be one of the bad matches for trying to get into the pub for us. And he said it would work for him because his mom is a member of the club as well. I don't know if I would enjoy, but, and Roddy McCowan, who's Las Vegas, I think.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. So wearing my Scotland shirt for Roddy, since I got much derision for my England shirt that day.
Well deserved.
Better choice. Definitely a better choice. Yeah.
But yeah, just I think those are a lot of the stories that I hear. Like obviously the ones from people are from Liverpool. I also hit I can't remember his name now. I didn't write it down. Is your buddy Chris?
Chris Bashford. Yeah.
That was a great one.
Yeah, that was. Yeah.
Talking about like when he was on the billboard and then he
Yeah.
ended up like meeting
That's
Kenny
right.
Dalglish.
That was hilarious. Yeah.
Chris is a character. Yeah.
Yeah, just like hearing those stories about like the connections that people make over the club, whether it's with big names or whether it's, you know, just with other people who have, you know, bought a shirt and watched the games together. It's good to hear stories about it. It gives me hope that maybe someday we'll do it again.
Soon. Delaware Avenue, Champions League Day final, maybe. Don't want to get carried away. So,
Well, there may be a possibility for you know, a place at the stadium.
yes, I'm feeling very optimistic today because I got my vaccine. Which
Oh, good.
First,
vaccine.
second, good job.
Yeah. Which
On
could be
your way.
misplaced, but anyway, today I'm optimistic. So, Sean, again, I'm not sure what the theme is of this round, but it's something to do with, maybe it's to do with the city, maybe it's to do with the club. Maybe
I'll
it's
give
the
you an
words.
answer. I think you want, Paul. No, like, I have enjoyed learning a little bit more about the city. I think. I mean, I've specifically tried to ask people here and there, kind of about the unique culture and you know, just kind of how Liverpool is much different than a lot of the rest of the UK, which has been always kind of an interesting thing to me. You know, it really is just seems like such a unique place and culture, and it's really a bit of an outlier in the UK in that way, you know, in a good way. But you know, just hearing various stories, and you know, fact that most people there don't support the English national team, which I already knew, but it was interesting to hear it over and over again with such intensity from people. And it's, you know, even like random stories. I can't remember who it was that mentioned, you know, like Winston Churchill. I didn't know about the history there with
That was probably Damien Cavanagh, actually.
yeah, you know, there are certain things that
It wasn't.
you know, just the history of the city kind of you know, just set it apart in a lot of ways that you might not know if you didn't live there or experience it or talk to people that live there. So
Yeah.
I've enjoyed that part of it. And you know, hearing from other people, I guess, about experiences living there and match days. And yeah, I'm about Tim's pulling his Simon Hughes book. I started reading, and I'm still not even close to finished. But I'm looking forward to finishing that. But
So I was wrong. It wasn't Damien Cavanagh. It was P. Hooton, who it was probably what. So I've got a list of about 50 names on, like, oh, it was great when we had that person, and I'm concerned that we won't mention all of them along the way. Hytham, Daz, been great to have you doing shows with us. Reference them, but it was Pete Hooton who did the who talked about Winston Churchill and the what they had the gunboats on the Mersey because there was a strike going on. Anyway, let's not detour into things Churchill did, because that's a long show.
Keep the politics out of it.
yeah,
But my favorite, my favorite P. Hooton story was, I don't know if you remember this. He talked about how Joe Strummer of the Clash had given him a pair of sunglasses.
That's right.
yeah.
Remember
And
this?
they were cheap rip-offs.
Right. You went to get them repaired. It's like, wait, why are these important, right? I thought that was. I've told that story more to other people than any other thing that we heard during the. So thank you, Peter Putin. Okay, so I'd like to do a third version of this, but I don't have a specialist kind of idea about it. What was the one thing that surprised you, perhaps, that someone shared with us that you like? Oh, I really didn't know that, and well, I guess I could use my P. Hooton story as kind of my version, but I think the one thing that absolutely surprised me of the things we've done is those people from Las Vegas, the Roddy McCowan crowd, and that video they did for that official supporters club event. If you remember this, it was like Hollywood production standard. don't know if you remember the whole thing. Like they
Mhm.
had cars with red flares driving across the desert at some point in this video. It was ridiculous. It felt anyway. I'm glad we did our video before we saw that.
They
One
won,
thing-
right?
Well, they won for creative something, I think. Yeah, there were other winners, but yeah, creativity. They had that. Yeah. Our picture, it turns out, from the whole thing was on the front of the Liverpool website from our supporters club, but that's as far as we got. Yeah. Yeah. So one thing that surprised you in all of the things that people talked about, Charlie.
You're giving me no time to prepare consistently.
Oh, well, if anyone else has something that springs to mind, go with it.
The most surprising thing, I guess to me the most surprising thing over the last 12 months has been just how the difference between the feeling and the vibe and the consistency and the momentum that this team had before we started this fucking podcast.
Oh, so we're to blame now.
Clearly. Just how everything has just been turned on its head. And it's funny because I think of at one point I grew my goatee, and before I got rid of that, I decided to convert it into a testament to our South African goalkeeper, who apparently had eradicated the curse that had been put on Liverpool's ability to win the league. So he'd sprayed pee all over the goal posts, both ends this time, to eradicate the curse. We subsequently won, the championship. And then the entire world ground to a halt. And I'm wondering whether he did a deal with the devil.
Have you seen him in the last 12 months? Because
I haven't. Is he still alive?
I don't know.
I haven't.
Wow,
It's got real weird, guys.
I feel like we're about to be on some QAnon site here.
You put me on the line. I got to come up with something unusual, and
let me tell you, that was surprising. I wasn't sure where you were going with that.
I got there.
So, Tim, hopefully you've had time to think more about your surprising.
Yeah. So the one I went with is when we talked to James Martin.
Still our most watched episode. By the way.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So he was a super interesting dude. Loved listening to him. Great talking to him. Stuff like that. I didn't realize he was as young as he is, and also that apparently he is a graduate of Oxford Law School.
No. Wow.
Well, that's automatically puts him out of my class, but I think it was more the young thing, because I believe he was like talking to us from his parents' home still. I'm not positive.
Maybe I won't tag James on this one then.
I might be making it up. I don't know, but yeah. The Oxford Law thing really surprised me. I was like,
yeah.
How about that? You're a sports writer and you're also a lawyer. Cool.
Yeah.
So is Ben Bergman, right? So we've got lots of law on the show.
Yep, he's a lawyer. Yeah. Sure, he's not the only one in our supporters club. I think we have a
Charlie is. Charlie needs a lawyer. That's
barroom lawyer. That's
Well, Hytham's a judge. Too bad he's not a judge around here.
Lawyers.
Is he really?
Yeah.
Man. So the biggest surprise is Liverpool supporters outside of the tri-state area Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware are overachievers. And then there's us.
Hey, that's not fair.
All right, Pennsylvania supporters then.
Yeah, let's get back to the whatever the question was. Surprising thing, Sean.
I don't know. That's a good one. I can't think of anything off the top of my head, honestly.
You've had all this time to prepare.
I know. I lost my notes.
So can I because I know you, like me, love some of the stat stuff.
So I could say I'm surprised at how many people get viscerally angry about stats. But I understand it now.
That wasn't where I was going, but okay.
You're not the only one, Tim. There's lots of people that are that way.
So one thing I have enjoyed actually is kind of connecting multiple times with Andrew Beasley, because he has these. He's even though I know he's got like this, he's like almost self-effacing in terms of like, well, I don't have the stats that the club has, but then if you read his book, he's got some really interesting stuff about trends, and the one thing that really surprised me, because I pointed it out in the last episode we did with him, was Salah has the record for the most consecutive playing for the team with the most consecutive wins in the Premier League history, and it's at like 35 games or something. And so what happened is, like, he was part of our run. He didn't play in the game at Old Trafford in 2019, where we drew, and then played in all the games we won till we played.
Because Origi didn't get fouled.
Well, Salah wasn't playing in that one, so it didn't matter what happened in that game. So he had this big consecutive run. I thought that was a really interesting stat. Yeah. Of course, this season it's gone to pot because he keeps playing in teams that lose, but that's a different story.
And then Mane had this incredible streak of Anfield wins, right?
Yep. So I have no idea where we are in terms of timing, but I thought we would
way over.
Well, that would be the norm, right? That would be the norm. So what I have noticed actually from other people is you look at the podcasts and they start out like 35 minutes. And by the time they're like into season 12, everything's over an hour. So I don't know if you build an audience and then you can kind of keep on going on.
You tune out an audience.
Yeah. So I've got two more questions. And so I'll give you time.
Holy crap, really?
Yeah. So
the
final question is going to be about, let's look ahead a little bit. Real Madrid allegedly without Sergio Ramos. Let's look at what we think about that. Before we get there, so we've had over 12 months of the pandemic. We started the podcast on the basis of, might be useful to do something during the pandemic. So my question on this is, what is one thing you learned as a consequence? And in order to kind of pause and give you time to think about one thing you learned during the pandemic, just around your support for this kind of wonderful football team. Maybe I'll just check if there's anyone we haven't referenced. Did we talk about Sean Rogers? Because I really loved his episode.
Yeah, that was a good episode.
Yeah.
We didn't talk about Daz. I didn't give Daz a shout out.
Daz, okay, yeah. One thing in the pandemic. Yep.
South Africans, don't worry.
I'm going to go to you next, Sean. We can talk about Daz. But Sean Rogers, his episode was really interesting because this was at the point where you're thinking, oh, Rhian Brewster, yeah, he could be a player for us. And Sean was like, I'm really not sure. Yeah. And basically what's happened is, Sean was absolutely spot on. So I would highly recommend, if you're looking for what's going to happen next kind of things, Sean really does appear to have a really good handle on that. He also wrote a magnificent piece this year about his kind of mental health issues, which I think are very close to home for us, which was very brave of him. And I'd recommend you kind of look out for it. It's good in the sense of it tells people it's okay not to be okay and to talk about it with other people. So
one thing I remember from the Sean Rogers episode is I don't know if I said 5 words. he was just like, he just was talking and talking, and it wasn't a bad thing at all. It was one of like just the most interesting, like just sitting there and listening to some people talk. Usually my brain shuts off after about 10 minutes of that.
Yeah.
But that day I was just kind of like entranced. So he was definitely a good listen.
He was good. And the reason I know, Sean, you were not on that episode was because I introduced it saying, oh, we got Charlie, Tim, and me, and Sean. Different Sean. Yeah. So,
it was a good episode. I did listen. I felt like that was Simon Hughes. Same thing.
Yeah.
Just felt like he was talking, and we could have gone another hour. But
I should look at the ratings, see if that works for us. We should.
Probably
We
not.
don't talk,
Who
it works for
cares?
Substituting Sean.
We do.
So, pandemic thing that you learned. Sean, sounds like you want to talk about Daz, our friend Daz.
I just wanted to give Daz a shout out. I thought he'd appreciate it. Pandemic thing I learned.
His metaphors are like unbelievable.
I don't know about Liverpool's story during the pandemic. Hasn't been well. We won the league, so that's great, but our form's kind of dropped, so it hasn't been good. No, I mean, in general, I think it's just been kind of learning that life can be relatively simple. I think I don't know. For me personally, it's been at times better to just things kind of slowing down enough to have more time to do things. Which is a result of doing things that are not being able to do things that I normally would want to do. But I don't know if that makes sense to anybody, but it's sort of shed light on the fact that we can get caught up trying to do too much in our lives sometimes. So
I think also what I've seen basically on some of the things that you post on social media is also because you can slow down, there's a recognition that it's okay to write the season off, because actually the last 3 years have been amazing. Winning things and being able to appreciate how good this team actually is and has been.
Yeah, I mean, I think this season, and when people look back at it, people will look at this season as more of an outlier than last season was. Honestly, it's just been such a bizarre season. No fans, the number of injuries, the condensed schedule. But I still enjoy watching the games. It's not like I'm not gonna keep watching, especially when there's not a whole lot else to do sometimes. But yeah.
I'll jump in and piggyback off of some of those. With the drop in form, I think one of the things that I've picked up on through this period is that football without fans isn't the same football, which commentators have, hit on that almost every week. It feels just how something's missing without the fans there. But I think it really, it's almost become normal to the point where we don't actually think about it. But when you think about, Liverpool ending their home undefeated streak is almost entirely, to me, up to an empty Anfield. If we had fans in the stands, I don't think it happens. Obviously, injuries are still going to take their toll on the team, but I think our 12th man at Anfield is a huge thing, which helps, as you said, Paul, to be able to write this off a little bit and be like, this is the asterisk season. There's a reason why this season shouldn't really count for much. There's a reason why, West Ham is in the top 6, for crying out loud. So that's one of them. And then just also another thing you said, Paul, about talking about the book that Sean Rogers wrote and about how it's okay to not be okay. I think that was a big part of the podcast for me, was being disconnected and kind of like a convergence of bad events for me right when the pandemic hit. So that changed job for me. It changed lots of social things for me. And so there was definitely a stretch of time at the beginning of this that I wasn't okay. And it's worked out great for me in the long run. But I think the podcast, like if we're talking about like good things that came out of it, it was interaction, and it was just being able to talk about something that wasn't the pandemic. Which is how we started this. Like we had talked about it at the pub before, and it was like, wouldn't that be fun to do? And then it kind of came around at the perfect time that we were like, well, let's finally do this because there's nothing else that we can do.
Yeah.
So it was really like interesting that way that it kept going. And one of the things that I found interesting when I was making my list of like my top 5, where they were all summer ones. So they weren't ones right when the pandemic had started. And I think it was the point where those ones were just kind of like trying to stay above water. And then by the time we got to the summer and things were opening up a little bit, it was when things were actually becoming enjoyable again. So it's been a really interesting time, and it's interesting to me that we'll have this recorded, that if I ever, want to go back and watch them all, it'll be a timeline of like emotions and like mental state going through this thing.
Yeah.
So dropping some serious tones, but cheers to you all for that.
Wow, that's awesome, actually, Tim. That's really, yeah. So Charlie, you complained you didn't have enough time earlier.
Yeah.
I might almost have ended there, but
look, it's been a period where everything's been turned on its head. There have been so many contrasting emotions, and it seems like each one of those emotions has been magnified, by what's going on and so on. And it's rough that after a season, the 3/4 of a season that Liverpool had, where they wrapped up the trophy and finally got it, and then all of a sudden we weren't able to celebrate it together, I've developed a number of very close friendships across this time, but it's been so different and so I guess awkward to develop those relationships and to maintain existing relationships which had never been even slightly difficult to maintain. Now all of a sudden everything was a little bit unsure. So it's a shame to have to go through that, but I think it's an adjustment that we all have to make. I don't think anything will get back to the way it was, but everything you live through makes you more, makes you wiser, makes you stronger, makes you more able to figure it out in the future. And I hope that we're able to celebrate what Liverpool have done, pre-pandemic, the way we celebrated that Champions League final win, and one of the big regrets of my life, I guess, was not to be able to be at that parade, which I didn't even know was happening as I was flying back to the US from Madrid. But every time I see those celebrations, it just reinforces how much all of this means to Liverpool and to Liverpool supporters across the world. And I just really hope that we're able to celebrate that and more, whatever that more might be, in a way that's even close to the way that was celebrated.
that may be a good place to end it. But I'm going to do quickly. Thank you, by the way, for sharing that. That's
No worries.
awesome. One little look ahead. Yeah. So one thing you like, in short order, one thing. So we kind of alluded to this as we were talking about, the potential for number 7, and we're playing Real Madrid next week. So whenever you listen to this, we're recording this on April 1st. Guess you're not foolish for listening to it, but anyway, the playing Real Madrid. Yeah, it feels like it would be perfect to play in Istanbul with a crowd in 2021 after what happened in 2005. The shirts are very purposeful today, by the way. Just kind of trying to find a pattern here. They're the last 3 shirts they wore when they won the European Cup / Champions League. I'm sure you knew that. And this is not going to be very helpful to anyone who's listening to this on audio. Looking ahead, what do you hope for? And it might be beyond this season, but that might be one place to start. Charlie, if you're ready, but let's go to someone else if you're not.
Yeah, I was in 2 minds about Ramos being injured. I'm not totally sure I believe that he'll be out for both of the legs. Obviously there's the whole context of Salah being honestly callously injured intentionally by Ramos. There's really no doubt of that in my mind. The way he was taken down was really just very, and then whether or not it was something to do with Karius, being concussed later or not. But, the teams that I've supported have never kind of got into that kind of shithousery and that underhanded look, whatever it takes to win, you do it. And Klopp, I don't think, has ever subscribed to that. And I love that I support a team that wouldn't resort to that kind of tactic. So I would love to have seen Mo bend one around Ramos to win it. But whatever. Look, as long as we beat the ever-loving shit out of Real Madrid and move on to Chelsea and or Porto, whoever wins that, it's fine by me. Just win.
Chelsea in the final in Istanbul sounds like.
I think that's 7.
Yeah. So actually, I don't know if you remember, Ramos deliberately got yellow carded against
Ajax,
and was sitting in the stands watching them get eliminated at the Bernabeu in 2019, I think.
I made that comment to Timothy today. I said
I could live with
whatever.
that being the image, like of him grimacing in the stands.
Now, who won the Champions League that year?
Who did? Who was that? Who got number 6?
Oh, Ajax. No, I can't remember.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
I was actually in Madrid for that.
Oh, no. There it is. That's a naturally occurring one. I appreciate it.
So Tim, what are you quickly looking forward to going ahead?
Yeah, like I'm look. If we win a number 7 this year, that'd be awesome. As I said, I'm not putting any stock in anything this year just because things are so weird. I think if we could win it, since it's going to be in Istanbul, that'd be awesome. But mostly what I'm looking forward to is hopefully things being back to some sort of normal next year. I'm looking forward to a Premier League where there's fans cheering people on. I'm looking forward to Manchester City without Sergio Aguero. I'm looking to Liverpool with hopefully most of the same squad intact. I know there's lots of talk about, a partial rebuild going on this summer. And I'm hoping that, obviously there's going to be some people on their way out, but I'm hoping that we have healthy center backs next year. I'm hoping 2 of their names are Virgil van Dijk and Joe Gomez. And I'm just hoping that we can put this year in terms of Liverpool performance behind us, and get back to some sort of, I don't even need an undefeated streak that spans the entire season again. I would just, enjoy some high highs instead of just kind of like this low, maybe 1 win kind of thing. And I think fans will do that, wonders for that. So
So while this is probably from a different episode, I'm surprised you did not mention as a Konate, the guy
Konate.
from Leipzig. Let's different episode. Let's do a transfer thing later on when the
All right.
season's more done. But yeah, it feels so it does feel like from the news this week about the money coming in from Redbird and like looking at signing players that they're definitely the looking after next season. We're starting to think about how that might shape. So,
Yeah, and I hope we sign Klopp players, which I don't think there's any way we're not going to do. And so if that's the case, I think we scratch Mbappe and Holland off the list. On to you, Sean.
I'm not sure about Mbappe, but why is
But not Koulibaly, right? We're keeping Koulibaly.
The reason I go after that, because you were the one who said, like, this may be a year ago, I'm not sure Upamecano, I'd go for the other guy. You had said that. So anyway, different show, but let's come back to that.
Your story. Still agree with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm hoping to see us close out the season really strong. I think the last couple of games we've looked a little better. I just want to see us play well. At this point in the season, obviously I don't want us to lose games, but I think the performances have started to get a little better. I'd just like to see us keep getting better, start looking like the team we were last year, and then, yeah, just go into next season strong and make another run for the title.
So obviously, I'm disappointed that we get to my chart, which tells you that Brazilian, all African, Portuguese players get treated worse around penalties in the Premier League. But that's another show, given they're all our forwards are of those nationalities. But
and those Germans get just handed penalties on a silver
let's be honest.
platter.
Timo Werner needs some help. So
yeah, he does. Even without Fat Frank, he still needs help.
Oh, that's a whole other topic. So we should probably end.
Yeah, don't get Sean started on Chelsea.
No. And Fat Frank hit the pause button.
It's like 2/3 of his fantasy team, right?
I don't know. I lost track of my fantasy team a while ago. I just stopped paying attention.
I do wish I hit the stop recording button a few minutes ago. But yes. Thank you for listening to the episode. I say first annual. Looking forward to the 2022 edition. Hopefully we've got a lot of great guests. Thank you, Tim. Thanks, Charlie. Thanks, Sean. Yeah, let's leave it there. First Day Kopites podcast. If you're on Apple Podcasts, please like it. If you enjoyed the show, and I'm assuming if you made it this far, you're probably not hating it. So.